Number 8. The GoFundMe Homeless Veteran Hoax. In 2017, a GoFundMe campaign near Interstate 95 outside Philadelphia claimed a homeless United States military veteran, Johnny Bobbitt Jr., gave his last $20 to Kate McClure when her car ran out of gas. McClure and her boyfriend, Mark D'Amico, turned that story into a national fundraiser, and it pulled in more than $400,000 from thousands of donors across the United States. The mechanism was brutally simple: a small act of kindness, a platform built for instant trust, and a public ready to reward decency on site. But by 2018 and 2019, New Jersey prosecutors said key parts of the story were false, and court proceedings centered on allegations that donor money was diverted to personal spending. Bobbitt later filed civil claims saying he received only a small share of what people thought they were giving him. This became one of the most recognizable crowdfunding fraud cases in the country because it exposed how easily a perfect story can outrun the truth. And this one was still small scale. The next case turns that same moral theft into an institution. Number 7. VietNow National Headquarters. Based in Rockford, Illinois, and founded in 1984 by Vietnam War veterans, this charity presented itself as a national support network for benefits claims, medical help, post-traumatic stress, and community services. What made it dangerous was not one fake story, but a durable structure. A veterans cause turned into a fundraising machine. On March 29, 2017, the Federal Trade Commission and 24 states announced a joint action against VietNow National Headquarters Inc., alleging its telemarketers misled donors by saying contributions would support local veterans programs. Regulators said about 85% of donations went to paid professional fundraisers, while less than 5% went to charitable programs. That gap is the whole case. By November 2017, a federal court permanently banned the organization from soliciting charitable contributions and ordered it dissolved. This is where the pattern hardens, because once a cause can be stripped down to a script and a call list, the badge on the pitch can change and the damage keeps moving. Number 6. Disabled Police and Sheriff's Foundation. In the United States, this was a charity label used in mailboxes and phone scripts, built to sound like a lifeline for disabled police officers, sheriffs, and their families. That name was the mechanism, because it borrowed the authority of public safety before a donor could examine where the money was actually going. Regulators later identified it as part of deceptive fundraising activity, one of several groups using emotional appeals, survivor stories, and patriotic imagery to pull in contributions under benevolent sounding banners. The operation was linked to professional fundraising campaigns that worked by mail, by telephone, and through promotional materials, methods that let volume do the work while only a small share of donations in cases like these often reached real charitable use. By the 2010s, state charity oversight offices and consumer protection agencies were no longer treating these as isolated complaints. They were tracing patterns, the same scripts, the same fronts, the same business model hiding behind different causes. And that is what makes this one heavier, because the fraud is getting more efficient, more portable, and in the next case, it narrows its target even further. Number 5. Help the Vets Inc. This was a Florida veterans charity operating out of the Orlando area, and from at least 2014 through 2017, it asked for money across the country by phone, direct mail, and websites. The promise was simple: wounded and disabled veterans would be helped. Regulators said the money went somewhere else. On July 19, 2018, the FTC and 6 states, Florida, California, Maryland, Minnesota, Ohio, and Oregon, announced an enforcement action against Neil Paul W. Paulson Sr. and the charity he ran. According to the case, it raised more than $20 million, while most of that donor money was routed to paid fundraisers, overhead, and Paulson himself, instead of meaningful veterans programs. The FTC alleged Paulson took more than $1.5 million in salary, benefits, and other compensation. The case became part of Operation Donate with Honor, and a federal court settlement later barred him permanently from charity management and fundraising, with a monetary judgment attached. This is the point where the pattern stops looking sloppy and starts looking industrial, and the next case pushes that machine even further. Number 4. National Vietnam Veterans Foundation. Founded in Washington, D.C. in 1992, this nonprofit was run by J. Thomas Birch Jr., a Vietnam-era Army veteran and lawyer. It told donors it was standing up for veterans and their families. The problem was where the money actually went. In 2016, CNN reported that the group had raised more than $29 million in 4 years, while less than 2% of donations went directly to veterans. Large sums went instead to telemarketing and fundraising firms. The expensive machinery behind the patriotic pitch. Charity Navigator placed it on a watch list, and New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman opened an investigation the same year. In May 2016, the foundation said it would shut down. Then, in November 2016, Schneiderman's office announced that Birch had agreed to dissolve the charity and pay $100,000 to legitimate veterans charities after findings that donors had been misled about how their contributions would be used. This is where the costume starts to slip, because the next case does not just question the spending, it questions whether the uniform itself was ever real. Number 3. United States Navy Veterans Association. For years, this operated across Florida, Ohio, Virginia, and other states as a supposed national charity for Navy veterans and their families. On paper, it looked expansive. In official filings, it claimed more than 66,000 members. That scale was the trick. Donations and political support flowed to a public figure calling himself Bobby Thompson, while the leadership, state chapters, and veterans programs behind the pitch were increasingly impossible to verify. In 2010, the St. Petersburg Times began exposing the gaps, and Ohio Attorney General Richard Cordray filed action against the group the same year. Investigators later said it had raised nearly $100 million from donors. Then the mask finally came off. After an arrest in Portland, Oregon on April 30th, 2012, authorities identified Bobby Thompson as John Donald Cody, a Harvard-trained lawyer and former United States Army intelligence officer who had been wanted since the 1980s. In November 2013, a jury in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, convicted him of theft, money laundering, and identity fraud. A month later, he was sentenced to 28 years in prison. And even that scale is not the ceiling, because the next case turns mass deception into an industry. Number 2. Kids Wish Network. Founded in 1997 in Holiday, Florida, it presented itself as a wish-granting charity for children facing serious illness or hardship. The core problem was not the promise, it was where the money actually went. In June of 2013, a Tampa Bay Times and Center for Investigative Reporting investigation ranked it number 1 on America's worst charities, after reviewing its fundraising and spending from 2002 through 2011. Over that period, reporters found it raised about $127.8 million, while only about $3.2 million went out as direct cash aid to children and families. Much of the rest was consumed by professional solicitors and fundraising costs, a machine that could extract donations at scale while delivering comparatively little in direct help. Kids Wish Network disputed the criticism and kept operating, but the scrutiny did not come from nowhere, and neither did the confusion with the far better-known Make-A-Wish Foundation, the separate Phoenix-based nonprofit founded in 1980. When a charity for sick children becomes famous for its fundraising ratios, the damage is already done, and the case at number 1 takes that pattern, then pushes it even further. Number 1. Cancer Fund of America, Reynolds family. It began in Knoxville, Tennessee, where a charity incorporated in 1987 said it would deliver cash, medicine, medical supplies, and direct support to people facing cancer. Instead, regulators said the money largely fed the machine itself: professional fundraisers, salaries, bonuses, trips, vehicles, and benefits for insiders. On May 19, 2015, the Federal Trade Commission joined all 50 states and the District of Columbia in a single case. A rare show of force that tells you how broad the deception had become. The complaint named 4 connected groups: Cancer Fund of America, Cancer Support Services, Children's Cancer Fund of America, and the Breast Cancer Society, and described them as a family-controlled network. From 2008 to 2012, regulators alleged the operation pulled in more than $187 million through deceptive appeals. Rose Perkins, the founder's former wife, ran one of the sister charities. James T. Reynolds II, his son, ran another. In March 2016, Cancer Fund of America and Cancer Support Services agreed to permanent dissolution, and James T. Reynolds Sr. was barred from charity fundraising and nonprofit management. At number 1, the scale is the point. This was not a broken charity. It was a business model wearing a ribbon.